Growing up as a 90s kid was really something special, man. It was the last great time to be a kid, if you ask me. Smartphones weren't a thing yet. Hell, most of us didn't even have internet at home. And if we did, we were only using it to feed our Neopets and message our friends on AOL Instant Messenger. Any of you remember that noise? We're getting old, brother. This was the era of the Backstreet Boys and Britney Spears, Beanie Babies and Dragon Ball Z, but all of these memories pale in comparison to the craze that was Pokemon.
I wanna be the very best, like no one ever was.
When Pokemon Red and Blue first came west in September of 1998, it consumed everything in its path. That Christmas, I opened up this exact original Game Boy and Pokemon Blue cartridge. And it was over, man. Those early memories of first discovering and catching new Pokemon, all the playground rumors about how to get legendaries, the novelty of it all, dude. Nothing will ever really compare. Back in Japan, Pokemon was booming and had spawned a popular anime and a trading card game. A little company called Wizards of the Coast had seen recent success through the early 90s with their Magic the Gathering card game, more than they had anticipated actually, and by 1999 they were ready to add on something new. Given their pioneering role in the industry in the West and their experience working through the early difficulties of Magic's unprecedented demand, they must have been the obvious choice to bring the budding Pokemon franchise to the West in 1999. If you were around during that time, I don't really need to explain to you what a big deal Pokemon cards were to kids back then. This was before every card pack came with a price chart and an investment strategy attached to it. It was a worldwide phenomenon, one that spawned what is now the largest media franchise in history. I distinctly remember saving up my allowance as a kid to take that trip up to Walmart, because they sold the base set packs for $2.50 by my house, which let me get 2 packs with my weekly $5 allowance. And dude, the memories, the squeaky crinkle of the foil wrapper, the smell of the fresh cards, and the rush of pulling a holographic rare Pokemon. Let me tell you, brother, that was the purest rush a human could experience. And rest assured, we had absolutely no idea how to play the game, or what cards were actually good. Older kids would often convince you that trading their 3 trash cards for your 1 Venusaur was obviously a great deal for you. And yes, this happened to me, and yes, I'm still mad about it. Charizard held a near mythical status. Those early days of sitting down with friends and trying to make up the rules to the game as we went, trading some cards and sticking them in a shoebox or a binder, some beautiful core memories. I've still got my childhood binder as well. Pretty sweet, man. In the year 2000, Wizards partnered with Hudson Soft to produce a Game Boy Color game based on the explosively popular card game. It wasn't just a card battle simulator, this was a full-fat RPG. Explore the world defeating trainers in card battles to earn booster packs, collecting Pokemon, and building and refining your decks as you progressed to keep pushing forward. It had the same basic structure of the Pokemon games that we already liked. Battle 8 club leaders this time, then battle the ultimate 4 trainers, collecting more Pokemon and battling your rival along the way. The game featured the cards from the first 3 sets of the card game, as well as some exclusive cards unique to this game to add an exciting twist to the gameplay that you couldn't get anywhere else. Remember that framework, it's going to be important later. This was the first time we'd been forced into the real rule set of the card game, and while again we didn't fully understand it, that game loop was absolutely incredible. Ripping booster packs, pulling that upgrade for an existing deck, or a brand new card that triggered a wave of inspiration for an entirely new deck. It's one of my absolute favorite game loops I've ever experienced. An experience that I was chasing for over 20 years before I found it again. And not where I expected. We'll talk about that shortly. Some time passed, and though there was a sequel TCG game, it never ended up making its way west. You can play it nowadays with a fan translation, by the way, and it's supposed to be better than the original. I grew up and slowly grew apart from the genre of card collecting and battling. Nothing really seemed to have that same spark of the original. I know there are some Yu-Gi-Oh! RPGs on PS2 that are supposed to be decent, but they never really drew me in. Maybe I'll have to revisit them someday. It really wasn't until Hearthstone came out that the card collecting fire was reignited. Those early Hearthstone days really were something special, man. It wasn't an RPG, true, and it didn't embody the robust single-player experience I was looking for at all, but the opportunity to discover new cards and craft creative decks was wide open. Nothing felt out of bounds because the relative power level and synergies of the cards was low enough at the start that you really had the freedom to craft your own decks, and no one knew or cared what the best stuff was yet. There was no established meta. You couldn't net deck a list copying one online. They didn't exist yet. You just invented new decks and had fun playing the game, testing them out, refining your decks, and improving your skill as you went. The battling itself was really fresh too. Resource generation was guaranteed every turn. Units retained damage across turns, and the computer enabled specific mechanics that wouldn't work in a physical TCG, and it also trimmed some of the bloat of the physical experience. The random nature of some of the mechanics was a little annoying at times, but we had coin flips in the Pokemon days too. Hearthstone was awesome. But as time passed, being a live service game, power creep invalidated older cards, as did set rotations. Mechanics got more complex, metas emerged, and you started to feel like you were grinding against the same small handful of decks that everyone had copy and pasted from the internet. It's not that the game was necessarily bad, and I'll play games like that from time to time. I'm competitive, I like grinding up the ladder at times. But ultimately, it lacked that robust, single-player, collecting, deck-building, card battling experience that you can play through at your own pace, and that was what I was really looking for. Right around the same time Hearthstone came out, I also went deep on Magic the Gathering. I'd never played the game before, I never thought it was for me, but when I started a new social work job in 2014, everyone, staff and kids alike, was playing together routinely, so I figured I might as well give it a shot. Let me tell you, I was hooked. Late nights playing with groups of friends, grinding games with kids and coworkers at work, local tournaments. There was a treasure trove of casual deck building and competitive outlets alike, and I loved it all. And I still mess around with it, don't get me wrong. A couple years ago, I built an entirely custom 450 card vintage cube for drafting with friends. And I still pop online in MTG Arena from time to time. I played for 2 to 3 weeks just last summer, grinding Constructed up to Mythic rank. But when I left that job years later, some of the shortcomings of Magic started to become apparent. After 2020, people stopped getting together as much, and without that dedicated playgroup available, opportunities to play dried up. Magic is generally a game you need other people for, ideally a mix of different people with different decks. Buying the cards was expensive, and the time that lapsed between games became weeks, then months and years. I found a little bit of an outlet in some older single-player games, like the old Duel of the Planeswalkers titles that they used to release, but those have all been delisted, presumably in an attempt to funnel anyone that wants to play Magic over to the online platforms that can siphon the money out of your wallet. I even went so far as to try out the super old MTG game called Chandalar, and while it was perhaps the earliest version of the formula I enjoy so much, saying it's showing its age is a bit of an understatement. It's a little crusty. Magic, Arena, and MTGO are basically the only ways that a busy dad like me can get some Magic games in, and they both have the same problem for me. If you want to play, you either need to learn the meta, perform well, and grind those games in real time, or you need to fork over some cash to buy entry into limited events for an opportunity to get the rewards necessary to keep playing. You can alternatively log in every day and complete daily quests, slowly accruing the resources necessary to buy your way in. This is the hook that keeps you logging in every day, keeps you spending money. But I don't need another chore, another job to do. This live service daily login formula can be fun in its own way, but it's an entirely different game, a separate genre entirely from what I was really hoping to find someday. Something that captured that spark of a single-player RPG trading card game, one that I can play at my own pace, but with the booster pack opening, card collecting, deck building, and engaging card battling elements all intact. And at this point, I was pretty convinced that the game that I wanted just didn't exist. Then a couple of years ago, as I was browsing options for other card games to try out and scratch that card battling itch, the live service game called Shadowverse popped up. At a glance, it looked like an anime-skinned version of Hearthstone, which was intriguing, but The game had been out for years, and it looked to be very much in that final phase of power-crept, meta-deck nonsense, and I decided it probably wasn't for me. Based on my research on that topic, and the digital overlord spying on everything I do, I was soon recommended another game, though. A spin-off, it seemed, of this live service card game, but in the form of a standalone exclusive released in 2021 on Switch. It was called Shadowverse Champions Battle, and although the bright colors and knockoff Pokemon-looking characters did not look terribly promising at a glance, I decided to check out a review of the game. 2 to 3 review videos later, and I was cautiously optimistic about this being a game I may actually really like. People, reviewers I trust, seem to be heaping praise onto the gameplay and systems of this title, in spite of the somewhat childish-looking presentation. But I didn't want to get my hopes up too much. You know how reviewers can be, especially if they're sent a copy of the game. Nevertheless, it looked promising enough, and with a complete in-box going for under $20 shipped on eBay at the time, including the full-color manual in the case, it wasn't really much of a gamble to roll the dice on it. To say I was surprised by what I found when I dove into this game is certainly an understatement. Shadowverse Champions Battle has everything I've been looking for in a card game since I first tasted the Krabby Patty secret formula 26 years ago, and what's more, it's done it better than any game before its release or since. This is the true definition of a hidden gem, and it gets that spark we've been missing right, down to some of the most minute details. Let's quick rewind a second. The Pokemon TCG game was awesome because it gave you an open-world RPG where you battled progressively harder challengers, obtaining booster packs from the first 3 sets in Pokemon's history. You built your decks from the available card pool you had, and as you ripped more packs, you'd improve your existing decks and gain inspiration to build entirely new ones. We've got all of that here, down to it also being the first 3 sets of the Shadowverse game. But we get way more packs to open now. The deck building interface is vastly improved with incredibly useful filters, and you can rip up to 99 packs at once in an instant if you want to save time. It's the same design concept, just with added quality of life, a deeper card pool, and frankly more interesting mechanics to build around because it features actual class archetypes and card synergies, more akin to something like Hearthstone. Speaking of Hearthstone, remember those early days we talked about where power levels were comparatively low, and building decks was wide open to your creative expression? If you had a decent mind for figuring out card synergies, you could absolutely build fun and unique decks and win games with them. An unsolved metagame of brand new cards, your brain buzzing with the possibilities as you continue to familiarize yourself with the game and its mechanics? That's here too. Seeing as how you start out with just the basic cards and the original classic set of booster packs of Shadowverse cards, then unlock new expansion sets full of all new cards and mechanics as you progress through the story, the deck building experience opens up as the game progresses, so it always feels open and fresh, and right as you master one, the next door opens with a whole new layer of possibilities, both for existing decks as well as inspiration to pivot into entirely new strategies. The battle system is a lot like Hearthstone as well. It's certainly the closest comparison. You have the stable resource generation, getting 1 extra mana per turn, called play points here. This means you can't get screwed on mana by not drawing and playing lands like you can in Magic. Damage persists on units across turns, again like Hearthstone, and board presence and interaction is a huge deal here. This keeps games super interesting, as the board state will swing back and forth when you get into the middle and later stages of the game, and the CPU opponents really turn the dial up on the difficulty. And you will struggle here at times. Don't let the shiny, bright colors fool you. The latter portions of this game would break a child's spirit. This is nothing but a positive in my eyes. not breaking the child's spirit, but the game takes its time in advancing the difficulty level very slowly. But once you get into the deep water, you're going to need to innovate. Redesign your decks, try out entirely new deck archetypes, branch out into new classes. The wins aren't free, and the game isn't mindless. You'll be genuinely challenged and adequately rewarded as you continue advancing through your journey. The beauty of the Shadowverse Champions Battle formula is pretty simple, really. It takes the best parts of what people loved about the early Hearthstone days, infuses that into an actual solid RPG like the old Pokemon TCG game, and then enhances the whole thing with incredible quality of life features. The entire game is voice acted in both English and Japanese. It'll probably take you over 80 hours to beat if you grind through all the available battles like I did, and it's entirely single player. No time constraints, no rank loss, no need for daily logins, and no pressure. Enjoy the journey at your own pace. Play half a match on the toilet, pause, and finish the other half when the kids are in bed. It's entirely flexible. If you've been wanting to recapture the magic of a proper deck-building, card-battling RPG, or perhaps this just sounds intriguing, I believe this is the single best one that's ever been made, full stop, and I implore you to give it a try. If you want all my thoughts on the game, I do have a review that I've done already, and I went pretty in-depth. That'll be a card popping up on screen here, and I'll throw it in a pinned comment as well. If you know of a game that's better in this same niche, or even a decent alternative, please recommend it to me. I already own Yu-Gi-Oh! Legacy of the Duelist Link Evolution, and I will be playing through that, but it seemed pretty clear that it wasn't quite on the same level in my short time with it thus far. Now, this next part may or may not interest you. We're just going to hang out and dive into some of the actual gameplay in real time, just to give you a look around and show you some of what I'm talking about. We're also going to talk about how you get cards and booster packs, rip a bunch of them, and then build a couple decks together using inspiration from what we pulled in those packs. We'll close things out with a battle or two using our new decks. I want you to see the process, but I also want to dispel some of the intimidation around deck building if this historically hasn't been your thing, or you're feeling a touch overwhelmed about where to start. Alright, well, being a card game, the first thing we should probably talk about is the cards and how you get them. The biggest way you're going to obtain the most amount of cards is by buying them. I'll show you that in a second. And you're going to buy them with the currency in the game called rupees. One way to get rupees is by finding these random hidden items called data boxes around the world. And when you collect these, it'll give you either just rupees, sometimes it will give you booster packs just flat out, or it will give you a smaller amount of rupees, usually 50, and an individual random card that's assigned to that data box. Another way that we're going to farm up rupees and also obtain individual cards is by finding these NPCs marked with a logo above their head, which is color-coded to the class they're playing. This one here is Shy Gal. And if we challenge Shy Gal, we're going to see the deck she's playing. You can see the information on the left-hand side. She's playing a combo deck, and the little blue symbol next to her name means it's a runecraft deck. We'll talk about that in a second. But if I press X, you can see there's a preview of the cards in her deck that she'll be playing, so we can kind of see what we're up against. But this is also the prize pool. When you beat her, you'll get something like 1 to 3 random cards from this pool. So if I needed Angelic Snipe for a deck that I was building, for example, I could farm her over and over and randomly get Angelic Snipe cards until I have the maximum 3 that I can put in my deck. This also allows you to farm up rupees when you beat her, and you will get class experience. There are, I'll show you here, if we're just going to start a new deck, there are 7 classes in the game. Each one you can gain experience for when you're playing a deck in that class and level up the class, essentially. I think right here, yeah, you can see in the front page here, this is a new account that I started because I wanted to replay the game again. And the class level in the bottom right indicates how much I've leveled up each individual class. Every time you level up a class, you usually get rupees, sometimes an individual card for that class, and there's specific ones you unlock as you grind up higher and higher in levels. And I think that's it. I think you just get class-specific cards and rupees. You can see in the top right, I have 1,055 rupees, and it's 100 rupees for a booster pack. So I could go to a shadow vendor, which I'm going to show you in just a second, and purchase 10 packs. Actually, I realized it might be good to show you this. This game, again, quality of life features, right? This game has a quick travel system, and I don't know if you can see it, it's a little tiny on the map, but there's what looks like 3 cards right in the center of the map there. I'll show you here, but this game's quick travel system, I can locate a shadow vendor on the map, quick travel to the location, and zip on over. See the symbol above it? These are little kiosks called shadow vendors. They're all over the world, and each one is going to have a different selection of individual cards that are unique to that kiosk, You can purchase these outright for rupees, just straight up, if you want that individual card, and you need it for your deck, or you want it to build another deck around. You can get sleeves that are essentially just those cards that it offers in sleeve format, so you can sleeve your deck with these if you find the art appealing. And then whichever expansions you've unlocked, you'll be able to purchase card packs for those expansions at any shadow vendor once you've unlocked the expansion. This is the primary way that you're going to buy, or that you're going to obtain cards and booster packs, is by coming here. If you press down, it just goes to the max that you could possibly buy. 1,000 is 10 packs. Boom, it's as easy as that. So, we're not going to rip these right here. I'm going to jump on my main account because I have a lot more money, and I want to show you the booster pack opening process now. Alright, I went ahead and jumped over to my main account. You can see in the top right, we just have a lot more money to work with here for the booster pack demonstration. Head over to any shadow vendor, they're all over the world. Obviously this has the individual cards. Mine are sold out only because I have 3 copies of each of these cards already. The game doesn't let you waste money buying a redundant copy beyond what you'd be able to put in a deck. Here's the sleeves for those cards. You can sleeve your deck in these if you think they look cool. But here's the booster packs. Now when you start out, you're just going to have the classic card packs. But as you advance through the game, you'll unlock these 2 expansions. But just to make this relevant to any new player that might want to pick up the game and try it out, we're going to rip some classic card packs and then build decks from those, just to make it relevant, sort of a you could follow along type thing if you choose to pick this game up. So let's rip a classic card pack. Now the booster pack system is, like many things in this game, pretty much exactly what you would hope for in a game like this. You can open the packs one by one like this, get your little dramatic animation and flip through the cards and see if you pulled anything worth building a deck around, get a reveal of a rare card occasionally that pops out at you. Pretty exciting. Game gives you a chance to review the cards individually. You can press X to take a closer look at what it does. Very cool. But nobody's got time to rip through hundreds of packs one by one. So the game also allows you to rip through up to 99 packs of any set at one time. And as the card pack pops up, you can see in the bottom right corner the skip option. If I hit skip, boom, it rips all the packs for me. Now, normally you'll see card art. I have rupees displayed because these are all redundant copies. I have 3 of all of these, but this is where you can check out what you pulled, fan through the cards, and start to get inspiration on what you might add to existing decks, or gain inspiration to build entirely new decks. Now that we've got some cards, let's look through these together and pick out some interesting stuff that we might want to build a deck around. And we'll learn about how I evaluate cards in the process so that you could do something similar on your own. The very first legendary in our pack is Prince of Darkness. You can see under his name on the right-hand side it says Neutral. Neutral means that this could go in any deck. It's not class-specific, so you could put a Prince of Darkness in any deck if you want a big 10-cost threat that does the thing that he does. Whereas if you look over here at Aurelia, Regal Saber, under her name on the right-hand side, Swordcraft is what it says. That means only the Swordcraft class can play this card. It cannot go in any other type of deck. In addition to that, you're going to find cards that are generically powerful, and then cards that have high synergies. Another thing that we look for, and stay with me, this might be a touch more nuanced, but I'll make it make sense. Let's take a look at this card as an example. This is Gandalf the Grey, basically. And you can see his effect on the right-hand side is, at the end of your turn, deal 5 damage to a random enemy follower. Cool, that's simple enough to understand. So we play him, he's a big dude. At the end of the turn, he's going to shoot one of their guys for 5. That's simple enough. He's a removal spell on a stick, basically, and if they don't get rid of him, every turn one of their guys on the battlefield is going to take 5 damage. That's a serious problem, and if they don't deal with him, he's going to wreak havoc on their board state. But what he doesn't do necessarily, it's not going to really synergize with other cards in your deck. This is more of a powerful standalone effect. So if you needed a powerful standalone card that costs 8 in your deck, he'd be a good choice. However, we look at a card like Fairy Princess in the Forestcraft class. This one says Fanfare, which is basically when you play this card or when it enters the battlefield, put fairies into your hand until it is full. So this is immediately going to max out your hand size. Now, if there were other cards in the Forest Craft class that cared about having a bunch of fairies or having a maximum hand size, spoiler alert, there are, this would synergize really well with those cards. And if you've played a lot of card games, you know that a deck is generally, the best decks at least, are generally cards that have synergistic elements, and the full deck ends up being more powerful than the sum of its parts. If we wanted to find cards that synergized with this, we would look around and find stuff. Let's look at Wind God. Here's an example. If we got a bunch of fairies, which are 1/1 creatures for 1, I can show you that. Oh my god. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and build a deck around Fairy Princess, and I chose that card very specifically, and the reason is because I accidentally closed out of the card preview menu that we were just in before I could look at other options, so whatever. We're just going to use Fairy Princess. It is a very interesting card to build around. Before we get too deep into the deck building, though, you should know every single time you beat an NPC, all of them throughout the game, you will register their entire deck list as a deck code, and you can just copy these. At any point in time, I can find one that I thought was interesting, click Create Deck, and boom, I can use the deck I just fought against. You can hit X to look at every single card in the deck, and if you're missing cards from the deck, you can see which ones you're missing. You can even create an incomplete deck list and fill it in with whatever you want. If you just want a template to work from to try stuff out, this is a great option. Quick editor's note here that I didn't mention in the recording. Within each class, as I'm fanning through the deck codes, you can see there's also aggro, mid-range, control, and combo decks within each class. So the deck building possibilities in this game are truly vast, and the deck codes are a good way to look at what those might look like. I just personally really like to build them from scratch. So we're going to edit a new deck in the Forest Craft class. The other 6 classes are very interesting. We'll talk about those a little bit more later. So now we've arrived at the deck building menu, and I'm excited to show this to you because the quality of life here is pretty insane. By default, every single card that we could put in our Forest Craft deck that we own is going to be displayed down here. And you can fan through them, read them, and add them as you see fit with the A button, or remove them by panning up and hitting the Y button. Simple enough. But what really makes this enjoyable is if you pull the left trigger, you get some really excellent filtering. You can filter by the cost of the cards, the type of the cards, what class if you want to just look at Forest Craft or neutral cards, rarity, just look at your legendary and gold cards to get inspiration for what you want to build around, what set they were in, etc. But you can also sort by things like keywords. If you want just fanfare, just last words, there's a lot of fine-tuning you can do to the filtering, which makes it really easy to find specific things. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use this right now to limit our search to just basic and classic cards, because by default when you start the game, these are the cards you're going to have available, and I want to build a deck that you could theoretically build yourself when you start the game, should you pick it up, just because I think that that's a good place to start with a deck building guide like this. I don't want to build some crazy over-the-top endgame deck and have you just be completely lost when you start the game. Here's an example of how to build a basic deck from the basic cards. Let's get right into it now and pick up the pace a bit. Jumping back into our filters and going to Legendary, we decided we were going to build a deck around the Fairy Princess card. And Fairy Princess is an example of a card that you would call a signpost. Signpost cards are cards that sort of tell you what the deck archetypes in a specific class or format might be. In this case, Fairies is a bold text keyword, and it's filling our hand. This is giving us hints about what kind of decks we might be able to build, what kind of mechanics we're going to be working around. And just for reference, you can see the left trigger next to the right of the Fairy Princess card art. It says Related Cards. Pull the left trigger. It will show you what that bold text card is so that you can take a look at what a fairy is. It's a 1-mana 1/1 token. So whatever space is left in our hand, we're going to get fairies to fill it up until we cap at 9. Cool. Another couple cards that seem pretty interesting in a deck like this, one that immediately catches the eye is Rose Queen. Rose Queen is a payoff card, whereas the Fairy Princess would be an enabler card. So, Rose Queen, if you had a bunch of fairies in your hand, you would be able to transform each of them into a Thorn Burst, and using our related cards trigger, Thorn Burst is 2 mana to deal 3 damage to anything. Which means that if we have a hand full of fairies, we can then burst them out by shooting them in the face, just burning them out of the game, finishing them off basically. Cool, that sounds like a fun deck. So maybe that's our deck. So basically, with the fairy deck, the payoff is, if we have a lot of fairies, Rose Queen is going to burn them out, and we enable having a lot of fairies using something like a Fairy Princess to put them in our hand. Hopefully that makes sense. So the win condition is the Rose Queen. The enabler is the Fairy Princess. You don't win by having fairies in your hand, but you do win by burning them in the face. Another payoff card, if we happened to have a board full of fairies, would be something like Ancient Elf. It has Ward, which if you've played Hearthstone is Taunt. It's a creature that they have to attack through before they can attack other followers or your face. And it has Fanfare, return other allied followers to your hand, gain +1/+1 for each follower returned. This means we could play out fairies to the board, which would allow us to be really mana efficient. If there were other cards throughout the game that allowed us to get fairies in our hand as well, and we're just filling our hand too much, we can dump them and then recycle them with Ancient Elf if we wanted to. So maybe we throw some of those in. And now you have a basic idea of what the game plan is going to be. The game plan is going to be get a bunch of fairies in our hand, play to the board, maybe bounce them with Ancient Elf to make a huge taunt. We're delaying the game, playing efficiently, surviving until we can get a hand full of fairies, convert them into Thorn Bursts, and shoot them in the face. Easy enough. Let's take off the legendary filter now, and see what else we can find that might support our game plan by looking at the rest of the Forest Craft cards. Alright, so as we advance through the deck building process, I do want to draw attention to not just what one of my favorite things about this game is, but one of the hallmarks of what I think is just incredible game design. Let's take a look at another signpost card within Forest Craft. This is a really popular one, and probably a stronger one than the meme deck that we're about to build. But Rhinoceroach is a Forest Craft follower that has Storm, which means it can attack the turn you play it, and not just attack, but attack their followers or the enemy leader. It's Haste if you've played Magic the Gathering. And it has an ability where when you play it, for each other card you've played that turn, it gets +1 power. So if we can play a bunch of cards before this, then play this, it's going to be huge. It's going to do a lot of damage. And if we peel back, we can look at cards like Nature's Guidance, return a follower to your hand and draw a card. For 1 mana, we could bounce our own Rhinoceroach, then play it again, and hit them even harder in the same turn. So it becomes a combo deck that's all about playing multiple cards in the same turn. Well, one of the best cards you could possibly play, if you want to play a lot of stuff in the same turn, is a handful of fairies. So we have the play a bunch of spells in the same turn, with support in cards like Elf Metallurgist, Fanfare, deal 2 damage to a follower if at least 2 other cards were played this turn. And that archetype overlaps with the fill our hand with fairies and blow the enemy up that we're already building. Not only that, but if we peel back over here, oh yeah, here we go, Silverbolt. Draw a card, then deal X damage to an enemy. X equals the number of other cards in your hand. So this is an archetype within Forest Craft that would love a handful of fairies that says shoot them for however many cards are in your hand. It's a fill your hand type deck, totally separate from the one that we're playing. Supported by other cards like Fairy Beast, restore X defense to your leader. X equals the number of other cards in your hand. Fill your hand, restore a bunch of life when you play this to stay alive. I think you kind of get the point of what I'm saying. There are individual deck archetypes, totally separate builds, that if you start sniffing out these cards, you're going to find different ways to build different decks and overlap these mechanics in super interesting ways to build extremely unique decks using your creativity. I'm not really sure exactly how much sense that made, so let's just go ahead and get into finishing our Rose Queen deck. What we want in this deck is a handful of fairies and a board state that Ancient Elf can bounce and replay. So first off, let's look for cheap cards that will play early and fill our hand with fairies. So we'll go to cost, 1 and under, 2 and 3. Let's just see what we can find here that might play nicely in our deck. Now you'll find some generic cards. Water Fairy, Last Words, put a fairy into your hand. That sounds appealing, but let's hold off on that for just a moment. Because what I don't want to do is trap ourselves into saying, this just says fairy, so I should put it in my fairy deck. This has to die to give us the fairy in hand. That's what Last Words means. This, however, for 1 cost, put 2 fairies in your hand. This is card advantage. We use 1 card to get 2 cards, so we're going up a card in hand. We're going to put 3 Fairy Circle into our deck. We're going to keep fanning through the cards here, and then we find Fairy Whisperer. Fanfare, put 2 fairies into our hand. It doesn't need to die to do this. We can play it, and when we play it, it will throw 2 fairies into our hand. It's a 2 for 1. Excellent. So we're building our hand size right now as we continue to build out our deck. Let's continue to look and see if there's something else that will put fairies into our hand. Sylvan Justice. Deal 2 damage to an enemy follower. Put a fairy into your hand. Well, we're going for a deck, kind of a meme deck admittedly, where we're trying to put fairies in our hand, which this does, but we need to survive a long time fiddling around with all these little fairy cards, trying to fill up our hand, not necessarily dropping massive creatures that can help control the board. So a little extra board control to be able to blast something for 2 early game is going to be pretty huge for us. Pixie Mischief. Return an allied follower or amulet to your hand. Return a random enemy follower to the opponent's hand. This would be a bit of a tempo card, I guess. It's kind of negative tempo as you use a card in order to bounce one of your own cards. But if we have cards like Fairy Whisperer, it might be worth considering, as we could then play this again to get 2 more fairies into our hand. I think that you're kind of seeing where we're going here. As we keep pushing through the deck, we can keep checking cards. Fanfare and Last Words, put a fairy into your hand. That could be good. It adds 1 when we play it, and another when we die. That's a 2 for 1. We keep moving. Tamlin. Gain +1/+1 for each other card played this turn. Well, that's kind of for the play multiple cards in the same turn deck, and I'm actually not of the opinion that that card is particularly good. Let's remove our filters and see what else we can find before we start trying to fill out the rest of our deck. It seems to me as though we're sort of starting to run a little low. Here's another bounce card, return an allied follower to our hand. We're running a little low on stuff, and it's going to take a while to find all of these things. So here's what we can do. We can go to search, keyword, and literally type in, I'm just going to type in F-A-I-R. Because if it says fairies, F-A-I-R-I-E-S, if I type fairy, it's not going to pull those cards up. We're going to search it. Now it will search the names of cards, so cards like Fairy Champion will come up, even though they don't generate fairies. And also keep in mind, things like Rose Queen will not work with Water Fairy or Fairy Champion. They're not technically fairies, it's only the tokens that count. If we want to build out this deck, I'm looking at cards like Elven Princess Mage. When we evolve this, which is a mechanic that you'll learn as you play the game, but just know that you'll be able to evolve consistently on turn 4 or 5, no matter what you're playing. So this is a guaranteed, put 2 fairies into your hand, and change their cost to 0. So, this would be a great card in a couple of different decks. I think it's good in our deck, because it's a nice mid-game 4-cost play. But also in the Rhinoceroach deck, That's 2 free spells you can play to pump it at no cost to your mana. So it's just +2 power. This one is interesting. Whenever an allied fairy comes into play, transform it into a petal fencer. Now, if we were going to go all in on fairies, it might be worth playing 2/2 fairies every single time. But I think ultimately what we're going to do is we're going to play a hybrid of the Fill Your Hand deck. So we're going to play some Fairy Beast. And we'll remove our filters and go and put a basic classic, boom. And I think we're going to start working in some early game plays. What we need to do is stay alive. So we're going to throw in Elfchild May. It's a 1 mana 1/1, so it's a creature on the board, and it will deal 1 damage to a random enemy follower when we play it. So it'll ping something on the board. And we're going to add Nature's Guidance to our deck. We looked at this earlier. Bounce a creature, draw a card. So we could play Elfchild, bounce it, play it again, shoot something for 2 instead of 1, and still get a card out of the deal. We can bounce our Fairy Whisperer if we want, and put 2 fairies into our hand a second time. If our Ancient Elf gets pumped up from bouncing a board, and we want to bounce it and then replay it, we can make an even bigger one. In theory, you could bounce Fairy Princess and reuse her, bounce the Fairy Beast and gain more life. All of these have fanfare abilities, which are going to play nicely with Nature's Guidance. Moving along as we go, I think we need to kind of wrap up our game plan. We're filling our hand with cards to eventually drop the Rose Queen. I think we have enough ways to put fairies into our hand. I think what we're missing is ways to close out the game or deal additional damage to make sure that when we get that Rose Queen, they're in a spot that allows us to finish them off. So we're going to go Pixie Mischief, because we're going to bounce our Elfchild Maze and our Fairy Whisperers in order to bounce one of their creatures as well and slow them down. I think let's go with Blessed Fairy Dancer. Give +1/+0 to all allied followers until the end of the turn. Sort of a backdoor win strategy. If we've got a bunch of fairies on the board and we drop this, it pumps their board. We could even do it twice with Nature's Guidance and get a bunch of free power on the board that will allow us to either finish off our opponent, deal enough damage that the Thornburst can finish them off, or, probably more importantly in this deck, use that additional power on our fairies to clear their board by throwing creatures into their creatures to slow them down. Now we have a couple spaces left, 4 in total. And looking at our mana curve again in the top right, you can see the cost across the bottom and how many cards are in each card cost across the top. We have a lot of 1 and 2 drops. That's normal for a deck like this, but I think we need a little bit more in that early to mid game to stabilize the board and ensure we're continuing to play cards that are a little bit more substantial in their value. So I think we're going to throw some Waltzing Fairy in. We know that's a 2-for-1 that will give us a fairy when we play it, and also another when it dies. And why don't we round this out? What's this do? At the end of your turn, put a fairy into your hand. That's a trap. This is 3 mana, do nothing, then generate 1 fairy at the end of your turn. And then it takes up a spot on your board, which I don't think really plays well with our game plan, to just get a 1/1 in our hand every turn. I think it's way too slow. So cards like that, just because they say fairy, you got to think about, if I actually play this, what does it look like as the game is advancing? And again, one more thing that I think would help us push our advantage. Having all these early cheap creatures, we need something to do with them. So I think something like the Wind God. Give +1/+0 to all allied followers when we play it. And then it's a persistent threat that if we get another turn with this still alive, it pumps our whole board again. So if you got a board full of anything, fairies included, it's going to massively increase the damage that you can do turn after turn if they don't remove this. And it could serve as an alternative win condition combined with our Blessed Fairy Dancer. Now, this buff is only until the end of the turn, whereas this other one is permanent. However, 5 cost is a lot, and we don't want a lot of those in our hand at any one particular time. So as a loose template, I don't know that this deck is like finished or perfect, but I think it's in a spot where what we should do is test it now. And we're going to go play it against an NPC, and we are going to see what we think about this deck. That's a master rank opponent. I'll cut and come back when I find someone that's more in like the A to AA rank, and let's just see how this deck does against it. Alright, to finish things off here, let's go ahead and take this baby for a test drive, shall we? And who better to battle for the grand finale than our good friend Shy Gal from earlier. Let's see how this goes. We're going to remember our game plan based on what we built is to generate cards in hand and extra fairies early, establish some sort of tempo through playing fairies to the board or controlling the board with big taunts like Ancient Elf, and late game finishing them off with Wind God or Rose Queen or some combination therein. I don't really want these in hand right now. I would rather have... It's not a bad hand. Well, look at that. That's a decent curve. We're going to go ahead and start filling our hand. It's entirely possible that this deck has far too many ways to put fairies in our hand, and far too few ways to actually establish tempo and not die while we build up to some grand meme finish with Rose Queen. But do I think this deck is particularly good? No, not at all. And that's sort of the point, is you don't have to worry about playing meta stuff. The game's not tracking your losses. You can just build random stuff that sounds fun, try it out, and go from there. Keep tweaking it and tinkering with it as you go. Well, we're going to burn a card here. That sucks. That's not a bad one to burn. Let's see. What do we want to do? We need to be careful with the waltzing fairy. I think we're gonna... I know we have Rose Queen, but we're gonna go ahead and flush our fairies here. So she can evolve now, which allows it to attack other followers the same turn. You cannot attack the opponent. Okay, this is pretty interesting. I don't mind this at all. So what we're going to do... And let me think. Math. So we can sack a fairy here. Drop 2 fairies. Then play Ancient Elf. That's all of our mana. Bounce the maximum number of fairies and use all of our mana. Evolve this into a monster and take that guy out. Boom. Okay, we've got decent board presence now. They'll probably kill this, but that's okay. Don't kaleidoscopic glow. That's my only ask. Okay. That's fine. The other cool thing about this game, as you can see, is the NPCs are no slouches. This is some random Shy Gal B rank NPC, and she will put your deck through its paces. It's not that it's overwhelmingly difficult, but the wins are not free. Even by the later stages of the very early game, you're going to lose matches and have to refine your decks in order to win. But it ramps up the difficulty in small, little, bite-sized stages, such that you'll have the comprehension of how to play the game and build the decks and tinker with things necessary to overcome the obstacles as they go. It's very well-paced, except for, the last couple battles, which are kind of cheaty, if you will. The computer kind of cheats, and it's kind of BS. But outside of that, it feels fair all the way through. Let's see. What do we want to do here? We're not really missing a ton of health, so Fairy Beast feels a little unnecessary. We're also very stacked on hand size. So we'll probably dump a couple fairies, then go Elven Princess Mage. And evolve the Elven Princess Mage to get a couple free fairies in our hand. Make sure we keep the fairies popping here. We'll kill their 2/2. And since we have Rose Queen, I think now is when we start playing just a touch more conservatively. They'll probably work on our board state. I'm going to pass. I'm going to pass and not play the fairies. Okay. She's ripping through her deck. She's going to sack her board and then probably repopulate it. Penguin Wizard, eh? Okay, I'm not mad about that. Pixie Mischief. What does this say? Return an allied follower to your hand. Return a random enemy follower to your opponents. This is way worse than I thought it was when we were building the deck. So we can play a fairy to Pixie Mischief to bounce the Penguin Wizard. We can... I don't mind at all having all these fairies in hand. We're not really missing a lot of health. It would be cool to be able to... Well, I don't know. I think we're going to go ahead and... Let's go ahead and just Fairy Beast. Yeah, I think we'll do this. I'm curious to see, I'm assuming... Oh, that sucks. Wow, that's a pretty good draw. Yeah, I was gonna do the Rose Queen thing, but this is just too clean. We're gonna kill Gabriel so that we have no chance of bouncing it. Then we'll play a fairy and Pixie Mischief, our fairy, to bounce and remove the buff from the Penguin Wizard. Sets her back on tempo as well. And then we will drop the Waltzing Fairy. And when it dies, it's going to put us at 9. I don't really want to burn a card. So I am going to play one fairy. But we're going to leave one 0-cost fairy in our hand, if for nothing else than the testing, to see if Rose Queen will change its cost to 2 or maintain the 0. I'm assuming it will just switch it all to 2-cost Thorn Burst, but we'll see. Okay. Well, this is a clean Rose Queen turn. Oh yeah. Cool. They can't evolve. That's a shame. Another Rose Queen, eh? What do we do here? We can play 5. What is that? 15 damage? Can he kill me next turn? 9, he needs 5 damage. No evolve. How many of these do we have? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 times 3 is 21. We do have enough total damage, so we're going to just hedge our bets just a tiny, tiny little bit. Sorry, I hope that wasn't too loud in the mic. We're going to start burning her out here. And we have lethal in hand. And it's going to be really hard. Okay, so we win. Sick. So our deck works. Was it optimal? I don't think so. If we didn't have exactly lethal here, we were in big, big trouble. But pretty cool to get a win. I think this deck really, if we wanted to optimize it, it wants more game early, and probably would want to, if you wanted to play Rose Queen, you probably would just throw 1 or 2 copies in to take advantage late game of any incidental fairies that happen to be in your hand. This whole Fairy Princess, Rose Queen thing seems a little ambitious, perhaps. It's just very clunky to completely focus on that. You probably would just play them as as a facet of another deck that wants the fairies for cheap spells for Rhinoceros or something like that. But anyway, I think you get the basics of the game loop. You're going to collect rupees, rip booster packs, get cards, build decks, and battle NPCs to get more rupees and more cards. And when you want to, you will advance the story. I don't have any story left on this account, but when you advance the main quest, you are essentially watching cutscenes, the story advances, and then you'll just be doing battles against whatever story NPC happens to be relevant to the plot at that particular point in time. But that's what the game is. The cutscenes in the story are a little cheesy, but the battles, particularly like the later story battles, are really fun because certain NPCs, certain like characters throughout the story, be them your classmates or the bad guys that you're fighting, they have specific classes that they align with, and you watch their decks evolve and demonstrate some of the more powerful archetypes in that class as the game goes on. There's some pretty difficult, almost gym leader style boss battles, if you will, and they're pretty difficult, but even the NPCs, as you can see, can be quite a bit to contend with. And that's basically the game loop. You're either watching some story stuff and then battling to progress the plot, or wandering around the world, battling NPCs, collecting resources, ripping packs, and honing your decks to be fine-tuned machines. And that's the entire game loop. That's basically the entire game. Hopefully this has demonstrated pretty well what I like so much about the game. It's impossible to really summarize it, but hopefully you got enough here to at least convince you to give it a shot, because once you get into that loop, it's extremely addictive to continue fine-tuning your decks and that rush of ripping a bunch of packs at once and getting that legendary that you didn't even know was in the game or you didn't have yet, and then boom, a whole new window of opportunity opens to build new decks and test them and tweak them and all that. It's super fun. I implore you to give it a try. If you're still watching at this point, kudos to you, man. High five. Appreciate it. But that clearly means you were interested enough to get to this point. If you're literally still watching right now and you are still like curious, just get the game, dude. It's not a very expensive game. And if you've watched up to this point, you clearly have enough interest to make it worth trying. That's my recommendation. Thanks for sticking around. Hopefully this was... I know the latter portion of this video really droned on, but that's okay. If you liked it, fantastic. Let me know. And I appreciate you sticking around if you did. Thanks for stopping by.